Kia ora whānau, welcome back to Word on Monday. Hey, we've been doing a series on the I am statements around Jesus in the Gospel of John, and I'm doing a follow-up on John chapter 11 around the Lazarus story and the engagement between Mary and Martha and Lazarus and Jesus and the crowd and the religious leaders. And so, stay on, and this is what we're going to be talking about. We're actually going to address Jesus' humanity today. Well, as we've been looking at the Gospel of John, we are in the process and in the context of a funeral. And I just wanted to point out today for us to consider, particularly if we are going through difficult times and or we have people in our lives that are going through difficult times. Today I want to have a look at the story from the perspective of Jesus demonstrating his humanity. As we know in the wider context, Lazarus has passed away. Jesus has been doing ministry around the place. He's finally turned up to the tangi. He's finally got up to the Lazarus and the family and the whānau pani, and he's there and he's watching and observing. He's already had some engagement with Martha, relationship to her faith. I said Mary last time. I said I posted something. The discussions around Mary and Martha, but it actually was Martha first, and now we come to the session and section of our passage where Jesus is actually directly now having a discussion with Mary. So in verses 33 to 35, we see a glimpse of Jesus' humanity towards his friends, towards those whom he loves. And I'll read it, and then we'll pick out some things here for us to consider. Let's go back to 32. When Mary reached a place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and troubled. "Where have they laid him?" he asked. "Come, Lord, and see." Come and see, Lord, they replied. In verse 35, Jesus wept. 36. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he have opened the eyes of the blind man and kept this man from dying?" Wow. I want us to consider today and to reflect on three emotions that Jesus portrays here and reflects his humanity. And this is in a context where, if you think of the Gospels, are in contrast to the book of Revelation, and I've said this before, the Gospels are really about Jesus reflecting the heart of God. So in one sense, this is a story where Jesus is revealing his humanity, and that he's connected with people, and he has compassion for people, and he loves people, and he loves those that love him. But it's also unveiling a wider picture and character of who God is towards humanity. And that God does love people. He's not distant. He's not far away. He's not in this cloud sitting on a throne with white beard and making judgments on humanity. But rather, he has a personal relationship with humanity. He wants to be connected to people. And so when we have a look at this passage and this story, alongside the elements where Martha and Mary and the opening discussions, that they all had to make personal statements about who Jesus was to them, even in the midst of their crisis, and I said this earlier. Here we reflect on who Jesus is in regards to humanity. In verses 35, we see two emotions that are tied with them. Firstly, that he was deeply moved. Secondly, that he was troubled. And then verse 35, he wept. Now, this deeply troubled kind of connection, some writers talk about it. It's like a horse snorting, and is kind of perplexed and annoyed at what's going on, and particularly if the rider is doing something to the horse that the horse is not happy with. So this deeply moved idea here is that Jesus is not offended or moved by the request of Mary or even the statements of Martha and those around him, but rather it's the effects of sin that's now come upon someone he loves. So Jesus is moved by the fact that here is a personal relationship that he has with a crowd of people, and people in particular, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, that here someone has died and he's been moved by it. He's been moved to compassion. He's been moved to look at what's going on, and it's annoying him. There's anger in this in him to a point where there's a shift that happens inside of you. Have you ever had an occasion where something has moved you? I've had stories and people have talked about where they've gone to significant sites or places where the sunrise, might be on Mount Sinai in the Middle East. I know for myself when I did a service back in 2012. 13 at Gallipoli, there was just something about the atmosphere and the environment. I felt this kind of, wow, this is amazing, and those who were with us would say the same thing. But this kind of deep moving goes to the soul, and it starts to produce a desire and other emotions within Jesus. Following the deeply moved statement, we see in verse 35 of chapter 11 that he was troubled, he was concerned, he was perplexed, he was confused, and it's not a confusion where you're not connected to your senses, but rather it's the idea of, oh, this shouldn't happen. This is not meant to happen. And so tied to and piled on with the idea of this deeply moved and troubled, we see in verse 35, in response to what he is seeing and the things that are coming out of his friends, he weeps. Another translation says he cries. There's this lament. There is this sense of who Jesus is, that he connects to those who he is around. And here, he's connecting to a whānau who are in a tangi situation, to the whānau pani. He is right in there with them. I remember a number of years back I attended a tangi with John Cornwell, my kaumātua at the time, who I was training with, and we were walking onto the marae, and I could hear the karanga of the kuia, and then there's someone in the crowd that we were going on with. As soon as they saw the waka or the tūpāpuku, man, this tangi reached out. A number of years ago, I was part of a notification team that were asked to go up north and notify that a soldier had died overseas, and the weepingness and the cry of the mother in the announcement of the news was something that was a deep movement in our heart. Here's Jesus, and in a time where emotions are ripe and things can go really crazy at a tangi, you know. I don't know if you've been to funerals where, you know, some will come say, I'm going to take the two papaku home, and they come in and say, right, we're going to lift them up and take them back home, and all, and emotions go wild, and people are up here and down, or you're trying to put the lid back onto the coffin for the burial ceremony, and auntie saying no, or mum saying no, the children saying, and all the emotions are, and it's in this context that Jesus connects to this whānau, and he demonstrates his humanity. God is demonstrating his love to humanity through the actions and the statements of Jesus. Isn't it interesting that the crowd around, there's some that, he did, you know, could heal blind people. Why didn't he just open the eyes of this man, you know, make it easy, and, you know, just do what he has normally done. Now he does do that. Eventually he calls him out and actually gives thanks to God for healing him. But Jesus has points of contact with you and I. There are things in our lives that we weep over. There are things in our lives that we hide. There are things in our life that we're not so authentic about because of fear, shame, or resentment, or bitterness. But he identifies with us if we allow him. Notice both for Martha and Mary, before Jesus shows his humanity here, there is an engagement. There's a connection. There's a connection between Martha and Mary. There's a response from them, and in so doing, Jesus responds to them in their time of need, and in their pain, and in suffering. Whānau, sometimes in our lives we're waiting for God and calling on God to do something and to act, but we're standing at a distance. We have to become personal. We have to come to Jesus, open our arms, open our hearts, and allow him to come in and say, yes, Jesus, you are my Messiah. You are the Christ. I love you. And build this relationship. You know, this relationship between Martha, Mary, and Lazarus have been building. Now, we don't know how long it's been going, but from the demonstration of Jesus' emotions at this particular time, it wouldn't be a far stretch for us to say that he had built a relationship with this family over a long period of time. He knew the family, he knew them intimately, and in so doing, when death came, he was deeply moved. When death came, he was troubled. When death came, he wept. May you find time this year, in the seasons of life that you go through. We're all going to go through things this year. Summer is followed by autumn, and autumn is followed by winter, and winter is followed by spring, and spring is followed by summer. There are seasons and times in our lives that you have to know what season you're in, and therefore invite Jesus into that season. Whether you're in winter or spring, autumn or summer, Jesus wants to reveal himself to you in these times. And sometimes he'll be moved, he'll be troubled, and he'll weep with you. This is part of a greater story that God is doing with humanity and with you and I and our family and our community, is he's wanting to bring reconciliation to all peoples where there is pain and suffering. A verse that, a passage that encapsulates this for me and why we do what we do here at Kaikwe Baptist Church is Isaiah 58, 9 to 18 and Isaiah 1 verse 17. When you call or when you cry out, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and I will say, this is the Lord, here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malice talk, And if you spend yourselves on the behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like noonday. Jesus here is demonstrating this passage to someone whom is oppressed by death, to someone who is oppressed by the effects of sin, and he has compassion for them. He is moved and troubled and joins with us and weeps. Whānau, I pray that this week and this season that you're in, that you may find the presence of the Lord with you. As Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. Wherever you are at this time, whatever season you find yourselves, may you know the presence of the Lord with you and find him walking with you in this time. Lord Ada, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us in our Word on Monday for today. God bless and have a great week.